So topic number 5. This past Wednesday, Power Slap debuted on cable TV, TBS to be exact. The premiere episode, Power Slap, Road to the Title. It was an hour long. Its focus was on introducing all the players involved, the execs, including UFC President Dana White listed as the founder, Hunter Campbell, UFC executive. He was the matchmaker. They had 2 notable slappers, I guess, who will coach veteran and up-and-coming slappers in a similar setting as The Ultimate Fighter. Notable refs could be seen as well. Jason Herzog, Chris Towney, Mark Smith are the ones I recognize. What was your reaction to the episode 1? Are you in for episode 2? Maybe the whole season, or have you already abandoned ship? Nolan, go.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it. I was making dinner the other night. I had it on in the background, but I go into everything with a little bit of an open mind, even when I think that, I'm not going to like something or that I think something's gross. And I have to say that this actually exceeded my expectations of just being wrong. I think that not only was there the impact, right, of the super slow-mo slaps and people taking just damage to the brain, but I also think the moments of like the recovery or the attempted recovery, like that shit was beyond like, that was just way past the point of the threshold of what should be overseen by a commission and say that it's safe. Like it just represented, the whole thing just represented a failure to me. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, you're talking about the TV ratings that came out or whatever. I don't know too much about ratings, but for me, it's a failure that the system allowed for this to happen. I mean, we have a system in place with these commissions that is supposed to oversee what promotions are doing so that people don't get hurt. So it's inherently a feature of the fight sport that people will try to push those limits, right? And you need to have somebody to push back. That's the reason that this whole system exists. So for a commission like Nevada to allow this to happen and giggle about it on the calls that we were on and say that, they trust that, well, we're going to let this happen because we trust the people that are running it. To me, that shows a failure and breakdown of the system as a whole. Like, what is the point of you even being there if you're going to ask Hunter Campbell, well, you're going to make sure nobody dies, Hunter? Like, isn't that your job as the commission to make sure nobody dies, that nobody's, no promotions are doing stuff that put people in some serious harm? And I know people will say, well, there's knockouts in MMA. People get head kicked. People get kneed. There's fights in Japan where people get stomped. But I think that there has to be a line drawn, right? And for me, the thing that I watched on Wednesday just seemed to me like an almost like an enjoyment of just mutilation, just like, oh, look at the brain damage. Like that was the enjoyment. That was the fun. The reactions from Dana and them while the girl's doing somersault over, getting up off the ground, scraping herself off the ground and doing a somersault because she's so screwed up from getting smacked. Just for me, like, as somebody that you guys know me, I'm not sitting around complaining. I'm not losing sleep over a lot of this stuff. I care about it. But I think that, oftentimes there has to be a limit to how much you care. For me with this, I just think it just seems like such a failure. It seems like something that is setting combat sports back. It's setting the UFC's brand back. And I just think it's something that, I'm not sure how long it's going to last. Because the other thing is, too, we see the numbers. We see how much people care about this. And I don't necessarily think that it's clicking with fans either. I mean, most of the comments on the few things that we have put out about it have been most of people complaining about it and trashing it. So I'm not sure what the shelf life is going to be, but I think, honestly, that the commission that's allowing this should be pretty ashamed of themselves. That's my bottom line about this whole thing.
You watching episode 2?
No.
Okay. Next up, goes.
Yeah, my reaction was pretty similar, man. It was just too brutal for me. And the ratings, I think that shows a big picture here. Like it wasn't Law and Order and then Power Slap, right? It was AEW. You would imagine a good chunk of that audience would also be down with something like this, and they didn't seem to like it as well. But the feeling was just dirty, man. It just felt like they were being ushered in like cattle waiting to be slaughtered, And like Nolan had mentioned, those reactions from Dana where he's just kind of laughing like he's just sitting there watching YouTube videos or something. If I'm somebody that was on that show and go back and I see those reactions and what these people think of me and what I'm putting on the line here, I would be pretty disgusted too. They're full on KOs and they're sitting there with their eyes rolled back in their heads and they're saying, all right, you got 30 seconds. Like 30 seconds for what? There's no way nobody's going to recover. Like it doesn't really fall within the guidelines of what we've been seeing in other sports.
Yeah.
It's very unpleasant to watch. There's the argument like, okay, UFC 283, it was pretty brutal too, right? There were 2 fights on there where I was saying, please stop it. But in those cases, those 2 fighters, they get the opportunity to defend themselves. And here you don't. the only guarantee is you're about to get smashed. And that is such an ugly thing to watch, man. It's just not for me.
And what's one of the rules in MMA? If you're not intelligently defending yourself, we're gonna stop the fight. The same commissions oversee this, right? That verbiage, that those words. And what do you stand in there? You're not defending yourself. You're basically just allowing someone to get a free shot. And it's not. I mean, there were a couple guys that were slapping that. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it looked more like they were showing affection. But for the most part, there were some big hands coming across people's domes. And then there was some like swelling that was going on. It was just a bad look, Mike, finish things off.
Yeah, so I have a friend that was like pretty interested in watching this debut, and he's been, speaking it up. He's like, hey, let's tune in together. He lives on, the other side of the country. So I was like, hey, like we'll go on FaceTime and watch this together. Up here in Canada, it was supposed to air on UFC Fight Pass because we don't have TBS here. We go to the UFC Fight Pass app, and it's nowhere to be found. Haven't been able to find it. Still can't find it up there. So I haven't seen the whole episode in full, but I've seen the clips on Twitter. I've seen The Ultimate Fighter. So I feel like I've seen it all already. I've seen enough of the show to make an assessment and seen the reaction. And obviously, I can't say it better than these two. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not interested. I think that AEW rating had around 900,000 plus people, and they retained around 230K or something. So I think that goes to show that it dipped off pretty good, and there's not people running their TVs to watch this. And I think it's probably going to stay that way. You go historically, people tune into a debut episode out of like intrigue and a lot of the stuff that Nolan was saying, and then it usually falls off at least a little bit. Curious to see what the ratings are like this week, if it falls off significantly. But yeah, I mean, like as far as the safety, the entire premise of this thing, Nolan laid it out perfectly, the commission's involvement, all that stuff. I don't really have a whole lot more to add, just other than I'm not going to be going out of my way to watch this weekly. I'll see the stuff show up on my feed. I'll see the people react to it, and that is more than enough for me. And I think all you need to really do is look around the Twitterverse and see what a lot of fighters and even prominent fighters are saying about this, and how it's wrong and how it's dirty and gross and whatever word you want to use to describe it. And I'm not sitting here saying I disagree with any of that. And then obviously the whole backdrop to this is the situation with Dana White slapping his wife on New Year's Eve. Just puts a whole dark cloud over this entire thing as well. And yeah, it's just not appealing to me. And I hope by this time next year or even later this year, this is just a thing of the past. Another one of Dana White's failures trying to splinter off from his UFC success.